This Lincoln inscribed photograph has been in the Guest family since 1862. The picture was given to her great-great-grandfather, who was part of Lincoln's campaign team in Ohio. The picture is believed to have been given by Lincoln himself to the Guest relative during a dinner at the White House. This is stated in the letter attached to the picture. This photograph, which is in an oversized portrait format, is quite uncommon from the regular carte de visite or small card photographs of Lincoln. These large photographs were typically used for presentations and special occasions, or persons to be given to.
You can see he's the unbearded Lincoln, not the $5 bill Lincoln, as we know. This was taken in 5960 before he came to Washington, because by the time he came to Washington...
This photograph was taken by Christian German, a photographer from Springfield.
So it's fabulous that it's the early photograph of Lincoln from when he had been debating the Lincoln-Douglas debate, period.
The letter dates to 1948. Although dating to a later time than when the picture was given, it helps give the background and connection of the photograph.
The frame is period. It mentions in the letter that he had it framed soon after he was given the picture. It's in great condition.
The appraiser values it at about...
That's why I would give this an auction estimate of a $70,000 to $100,000 auction estimate. I would be thinking about putting a $120,000 insurance value on it.
These items belong to the Guest husband's great-grandfather, who was the governor of Ohio between 1846 and 1848. These items, which include an inscribed President Lincoln's speech and his funeral invite, show the level of relationship Lincoln had with the Guest relatives.
The first document is black bordered, and it's an invitation to Abraham Lincoln's funeral services in Springfield.
That's right.
In April 1865.
They are quite rare, as only a few people got them. Also, it comes with the original envelope it was mailed in. This little pamphlet contains Lincoln's Cooper Union address. The speech, titled "The Address of Honorable Abraham Lincoln," was delivered in New York in February 1860, right before the presidential campaign started.
And this happens to be the speech that sort of propelled Lincoln into the national consciousness, made him a national contender for the presidency.
This is the original pamphlet that this important address was read from.
And best of all, up at the top here, is this little ink inscription, "With respects of A. Lincoln." So this was presented by Lincoln to your ancestor.
These items, which are in pristine condition, are collectively valued at about $77,500.
Wow.
It's a very important piece.
We now take a look at these signed Abraham Lincoln pictures and letters. These items belong to the Guest grandfather, who was a collector of Lincoln memorabilia. These two letters were written by Lincoln to General Halleck during the time of the war. They were both written in 1862, the first in May, while the other in October.
The letters are totally in Lincoln's hand, which is a benefit. The signature is wonderful. You were talking about reading the letters, and tell me what you got out of that.
The first letter sees Lincoln appealing to Halleck to promote some officers.
He's so almost apologetic. And one of them, he says he's forsworn doing anything about this, but now he's getting pressure from the Missouri representatives in Congress. And so, like, he doesn't want to interfere with General Halleck. I don't think this kind of politeness would happen today.
In the other one, he talks about the need to replace officers and generals as the war worsens.
But he's talking about General Rousseau and Colonel Pope and saying, look, we've had tremendous losses. I mean, this is just after Shiloh. The battles are going on. And even though the war is sort of on an even keel somewhat, the Union...
Also, there's the picture of Lincoln, which is a carte de visite and in very good condition, with the signature still boldly signed.
When you get to the back of it, though, an interesting item is you have John Hay signing, saying this is an authentic Lincoln signature. It's a Brady photograph.
These letters and signed pictures are collectively valued at about $80,000 to $120,000.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
A remarkable man. This Guest brings these signed John Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson signed photos, which he took himself. He was the White House photographer for JFK. He started the job right from Kennedy's inauguration day in 1961 to the dreadful assassination in Dallas in 1963. Right after the assassination, he took the only photograph available of Lyndon B. Johnson's swearing in.
And when I got there, the press secretary, acting press secretary, Malcolm Kilduff, said, "Thank God you're here, Cecil." He said, "The president's going to take his oath on the plane, and you're going to have to service the wires with the photograph."
This other photo was taken on Christmas Day, 1962. The photo was signed by the Kennedys and given to him.
You can read the inscription.
Yeah, it says for Cecil Stoughton, who took this photograph, with appreciation and best wishes always, Jacqueline Kennedy, and then it's signed John Kennedy below.
Johnson also autographed his swearing-in photo, and it is seen in this other photograph.
This photograph of Johnson sitting at his desk, and in order to have some kind of activity, I asked him if he'd sign the pictures. So he's signing this picture, and that's the picture
So
that he signed.
this picture is lying right there.
These are truly remarkable images.
It's difficult when we talk about value with such iconic images, and also these are unique. They're inscribed to you by the president and first lady, so they are unique and obviously irreplaceable.
They are valued at about...
I would value, for insurance value, the photograph of LBJ taking the oath at $50,000. We would insure this one at $25,000. Any significant value. So together, I would put the value for insurance at $75,000.
Okay.
And it is an honor to meet you. These images I knew of my entire life, and I appreciate your work, and I'm glad you finally have some recognition.
Well, thank you very much.
Next, we look at this quite remarkable autograph and picture album. This extraordinary album was found in the guest great-grandmother's basement in Annisquam, Massachusetts. This album contains the pictures and signatures of President Lincoln and his entire cabinet and Senate members.
There's Abraham Lincoln, autographed by Abraham Lincoln. And who's this guy?
The vice president.
Turn the page, and we see all of the members of Lincoln's cabinet.
The album dates to around the 1860s.
Abraham Lincoln has always been collectible. His autograph has always been collectible. He signed very, very few photographs.
The appraiser talks about the value of the collection.
I'll tell you, most of the value in this album is in the first few pages. Autograph collectors don't value U.S. senators' autographs, and even though it's an autographed photograph, which collectors want more than anything.
At auction, this rare collection is valued at $100,000 to $125,000.
Really?
Never.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thanks. That's great.
We kick off this series with this iconic George Washington commemorative mantel clock. This lovely piece of American presidential history has been in the Guest family for several years, as it was owned by a great-great-grandfather. This commemorative piece is precious, as only a handful were made. It dates to around 1810. The statue depicts George Washington, and it shows him at the time of his famous farewell speech to his officers. Clocks of this type are present in the White House Collection State Department. There are some condition issues with the clock, as the hands have been replaced and the ormolu redone. This does affect the value of the piece. At auction, it's valued at about $125,000. An unexpected treasure. This next item was found in the drawer of a desk the Guest father had bought in an antique store. The item, which is an autographed Abraham Lincoln letter, dates to June 1860 from Springfield, Illinois. This letter, which was written by Lincoln, was addressed to Mr. William Jones. Its content talks about how he's very eager to see his old Spencer County friends.
Lincoln lived in Spencer County, Indiana, from the age of 7 to 21. And William Jones was essentially Abraham Lincoln's first employer.
Jones was a mentor to young Abraham, offering him books and teaching him American history.
So this essentially is a letter to his first mentor. Mr. Jones's house in Indiana, it is today a museum because of his association with Lincoln.
Letters of this kind are very rare to find. The appraiser values it at about...
Would have an auction estimate today of probably conservatively $30,000 to $50,000.
Let me know in the comments what you think this item's worth. And at the end, let's see who's closest. Next on this list is the 1864 Lincoln campaign poster. This poster was given to the Guest husband by a friend in 1985. This poster, which reflects the 1864 presidential election, shows Lincoln and his running mate, Andrew Johnson. This poster was usually out on a fence or barn for the campaign. Poster was made by joining several pieces of paper.
And if you look up along here, you can see a seam running down. That was a separate sheet of paper. These were done by wood block. So each color was put on with a different block.
These posters are rare to find, as most have been destroyed during their times on the barns and fences. This particular poster has been restored to reveal its wonderful design.
You had it deacidified, you had it lined, and they did in-paint. And you can see in here there's a gap that was filled in, but you've preserved it.
The campaign poster is valued at about $40,000.
Probably very reasonable.
This guest brings an archive of John Kennedy documents on which she worked during his administration. She worked as a press officer.
Well, I worked in the White House press office. I actually started working for him in 1958. I got out of college, and he was just starting his presidential campaign.
Oh, my gosh.
And went then into the White House.
This is a picture of her on an aircraft carrier. These 3 transcripts were of notable speeches she and Kennedy worked on.
To have in the sort of the pantheon of manuscripts, the original or transcripts, which he is obviously revising on the go, as you say, is incredibly interesting to understand the man and his thought process.
This is a speech written in 1961 on the anniversary of Life magazine.
He mentions in the speech the need for the great organizational communications in this country to have an obligation and responsibility to our national life. It sort of picks up his theme of how we all have responsibility.
This is a political speech he gave in Pittsburgh. Here, he rails against the blind opposition of the Republican congressman for a farm bill.
One of the things I note, and we've seen in other cases, that his handwriting was pretty awful.
This is the first draft of his speech at Amherst College for the founding of the Robert Frost Library.
I wanted to talk about this object as well, and you were on the trip to Dallas in 1963.
Well, it was a campaign trip.
Yes.
This is a press manifest of his speech in Dallas. The guest talks about the day of the assassination.
I was on Air Force One, actually in the president's cabin. One of the stewards came through and said, "Put everything away, we've got to leave." And, a couple of minutes later.
This is a truly wonderful and priceless collection.
I look at it from an auction house perspective, and we try to be conservative, but in many cases, the whole is greater than the parts. If one of these pieces were in a family, it wouldn't be the same as the whole entire collection together.
It's valued at $30,000 to $50,000.
Wow.
Of course, on the day with something so unique and this interesting collection, it could certainly do much better than that.
Thank you. I'm surprised.
This unique piece medal is a significant piece of history. The medal symbolized diplomatic ties between the U.S. government and Native American tribes in Thomas Jefferson's era. In 1803 and 1804, Lewis and Clark took several peace medals on their expedition. This piece was crafted in 2 metal parts, struck and then joined together with a rim. The silver medal features Jefferson's profile on one side and symbols of peace and friendship on the other. The peace medal was a gesture of goodwill. At auction, this rare piece of Americana is valued at about,
I think it would be in the range of around $40,000 to $50,000.
Oh my God.
It's a really rare piece of Americana.
Oh,
it's a great piece of history.
Never thought it would be worth that much. Should I have it fixed?